Well, hello there, people in the viewerverse. To Sci Captain Steve, and today, chums, we're taking a look at how No Man's Sky was made, and we're looking at the GDC 2017 clip first of Sean Murray talking about game development early stages and what they tried and what didn't work when it came to No Man's Sky, and then we're going to GDC 2019, and it's more for how he handled his time with the press in the early days, which is a very interesting talk. So I'm going to be jumping into GDC 2017 first. So let me bring that up on screen for you. Well, hello there, Monkey. Welcome. Wow, you're first. You are indeed, Monkey. Welcome in. Okay, so here we go. Podcast. Boom. Lovely jobs. Sweet. So here it is. There's a 2017 GDC, and we've got quite a lot going on down here. And yeah, if you want to see the full clip, you can indeed, but I'm jumping into about 492 seconds in. So there we go, let's go for this.
I don't understand it all. No, it's just because I'm going to talk about the noise generation. So I'm going to talk about a bunch of different ways that I tried to solve this problem, and the problem was creating diverse worlds that would surprise me when I'm playing, and would kind of surprise anyone who played, and keep them interested, and meant that they could play for hundreds of hours and see something new, but also remained playable, and also remained like predictable in a way in that I needed to know how much memory they were going to take and what kind of performance they would have and stuff like that. So my first attempt.
One sec before we get to the first attempt. A few people have been asking me if I've joined the army. One moment, let me just make me nice and big again. Let me just have a look, see. So here we go. I'll just take the headphones off for a second. This is my new haircut, so yeah, but it goes all the way freaking round. Look at that. Freaking mentals, huh? Yeah, didn't ask for that, but that's what I got. Normally I just have a line, you know? But yeah, I'm going to my brother's wedding. His wedding is tomorrow. No, Saturday. I keep forgetting what days it is because I'm off all this week. Anyway, back to the video. Yeah, snazzy haircut. No, I have not joined the army.
This is like way back 5 years ago. I just copied Minecraft. Like it was, you know, that was quite popular at the time to clone Minecraft. So by that I mean the same method as Minecraft uses, which is trilinear filtered, kind of low density Perlin noise fields stacked on top of each other. So I was actually, like, Notch has talked about this a bit, but at the time what I did was I got Minecraft and I disassembled it, and then I named all the variables and I worked out how it was working, which is probably bad, but we didn't use it, so it's fine, and I can't be sued, right?
I like how it says, and I can't be sued, and you can see he looks fairly uncomfortable with that line. And, you know, by this time, he's had that, you know, the Superformer patent guy turn up on his doorstep. He's had Sky try to sue him. So, coming on stage and saying that he pretty much ripped off Minecraft, he's either got balls or he's just, I think he's just too truthful for his own good at some times, you know. But then other people will say, well, he did lie about, you know, that scripted bit within the side of the E3. Yeah, but maybe he was really hoping that he could deliver that sort of thing in-game at the time. Maybe it wasn't a lie when it came out of his mouth. At the time, he had every intention to get it as good as what we saw in that E3 tech demo. And because of maybe dropping the super formula, and maybe because, you know, his Minecraft copies weren't good enough, who knows? But anyway, let's let him carry on.
I hope, right? But yeah, it was really interesting. And the reason I did that is because no one talks about this, but Minecraft is amazing. Like, in terms of the worlds, like, I think that is the secret, and anyone who clones Minecraft, they always forget that, and they end up with way less interesting worlds. And I think it is the core of why Minecraft is so compelling, right? And why it's been such a phenomenon. Now the problem is we were polygonizing these worlds, and we were making something that was more realistic. And the thing that makes Minecraft really interesting is all this kind of terraced shape, and makes it play really well. And the reality is that when you put something realistic over that, it's like draping a cloth over that. And these are low density points on a Perlin noise field and then trilinear filtered off. So effectively what you have is just a load of mounds and pyramids when you put that cloth over the top. And actually it doesn't work in a realistic sense. So it didn't play particularly well for us, and actually you expect to see instantly you want crevices, you want erosion, you want this kind of thing, which is actually built in Minecraft. But you want this kind of detail, this more realistic shapes and mountain shapes and things like that, right? So I abandoned that, and then I just tried something simpler, so just high density, rather than low density, high density noise fields, right? Straight kind of Perlin noise. This is what Space Engine uses if you're used to that. It's the classic image of a terrain sim, right? Like, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, this is a render from Terrigen, and this is Perlin noise, and like, I go through like people's CVs and demos and stuff like that when they apply, and like this is the classic thing that you see, which is just unaltered Perlin noise, and it sort of looks like mountains, but it also sort of doesn't. I used to apply loads of image processing to this to pick out features, highlights, add more contrast, things like that, layer loads of things on top of each other, and in some of our earlier like videos and demos and stuff like that, we were using some of these methods, but the worlds aren't that interesting, and actually the real world isn't like this, right? The features are extremely repetitive in Perlin noise, and they also are unrealistic in that the slope, the gradient, is reasonably constant, and that's not what you see in the real world. In the real world you see sharp cliffs, you see way more distribution of noise, which brings me on to the next thing that I tried. So DEM data is digital elevation map data, and you can just download it online. And it's the real world, if you know, real world data, just like captured. It's kind of what Google Maps and things like that. It's contour data from the real world captured at various points. And I thought it would be cool, and somebody else had already done it in Parbury, and way better than me, but download this and actually extract data from it. So parse, like just take Utah or something like that, right? And then parse all the data from it and work out what's the rate of change of slopes and shapes, and try and get some of that data out, and then feed that back into noise generation. Right, work out the distribution of shape change, because I decided that the distribution of shape change in Perlin noise isn't very realistic. And these shots are taken from that paper in Parbury, which is a really good paper.
So what I find really interesting is he was willing to say, yes, I even tried pulling apart Minecraft, but what he doesn't touch on is what Hazel Mackenzie touched on in my very first video. And she actually said Sean Murray's been playing with the super formula, which is making all these very interesting things happen to planets. He doesn't mention the super formula, which is a real shame in GDC 2017, even if he said it's something that we tried, but it failed for XYZ reason. If you read the New Yorker interview with Sean Murray, the reason why he says that the super formula isn't going to be used inside of that interview with the New Yorker is that it upset the pathing of all the animals, the AI. They just couldn't deal with what the super formula was throwing out. You know, creatures would end up walking into the terrain or trying to ghost themselves through objects and things. But yeah, take a read of the New Yorker news article. If I remember, I'll put it in the actual video description.
And his conclusion, and mine's the same, that noise in the real world is exponentially distributed. And you'll see what I mean. Okay, so this is normal Perlin noise, and then this is when you train Perlin noise basically on DM data. So you get something that's much more realistic, right? And this, like, if I had my time over, like, I would love to put more time into this. This is such a rich area for investigation. It is, however, unfortunate. The real world is super boring. So we would put this into our game, and I don't know if anyone's ever been for a walk, but it turns out walking in the real world is super boring. I hadn't been, but I realized that playing the game, right? Like, you walk for ages and nothing happens. And so that's what was going on. And I said that I'd used Utah, and I said it to my friend who lives in Utah, and he said, like, oh, you can, like, Utah is so flat sometimes that you can see the back of your own head, right? But this is a video from that talk, and you see it looks awesome. It looks real, and this is what you want, but you just want it at a different scale. These are the kinds of shapes that we want, right? But you can see that is pretty boring.
It'd be perfect for base building, a planet like that. And you do come across the odd planet that is very flat like this as well. And you do get those sheared cliff edges and drops and massive great big canyons now. You didn't get them so much right back when. But right back when, we used to get sort of like purling sort of worms that appeared above ground, like tubular things that you could fly through, and also awesome landscapes. I still think that they could do with a bit more tweaking to make them feel a little bit more alien. Especially those exotic planets. In fact, the exotic planets are the more flattest ones. I don't think I've ever come across an exotic planet with sheer cliff edges on them.
Okay, so I went from there to a thing called Uber noise. I call it Uber noise. And that's this kind of unifying method of noise generation.
I don't know whether this was before Uber taxis, but you might get sued again using that, Mr. Murray. No. So this is his own idea of generation, and it's noise generation. But what he's doing is he's pretty much taking different methods like whirly, purling, and all the others that he aforementioned, and sort of layering them to give the sort of terrain that we have now. Again, no mention of the super formula.
So the reality is all that experimentation before, and that happened over the course of about like 3 or 4 years, informed what we needed and what we didn't, and what we wanted from this, and what was possible, and what makes something fun to play, what doesn't, what controllability we want, and things like that. Okay, so, and I say over the course of 4 years, like, I can't explain this enough, but No Man's Sky was such a small team, and the majority of the time there's only a few programmers on it, that any one programmer like myself, we were doing a million different things. So this would be like every once in a while I would get a week to work on this, or I would work on it in my spare time or something. So let me take you through some of the things that I'd used previously, and then I'm going to talk about how I kind of brought all those things together and what that leads to.
Okay, now this gets seriously freaking boring from here on in. In fact, the start was severely freaking boring as well. It was mainly just talking about, well, the previous person that spoke, basically, from Hello Games. And that was Hazel Mackenzie, I believe, just doing a recap of what they said back in 2015. And the things that they left out was the super formula. They left out distance from sun, planetary rotation, all of the other little bits and bobs and nuances like the slider system. No, none of that was mentioned. None of it's mentioned. They've now gone down the biome route. This is after launch, and this is what we've got now. And this is the actual layers that Sean Murray and the team use to actually build everything together. Now, although I think that it's quite boring, it's because it's all math-based and it's just equations and basically the vectors and the principles that they use. I'm going to hit play and let you listen to it for about 5 minutes, but then I think I'm going to jump to the other clip.
Okay, so here are the current noise methods that you see really commonly used. Lots of different places use this. So purling, simplex, billow, ridged, whirly, analytical derivatives, domain warping, and I'm just going to take you through a couple of those. So purling, this is what you've seen everywhere. This is that, like, and I don't mean to sound bad about it, purling's super amazing, right? And like Ken Perlin won his like Oscar for this and stuff like that, and everyone still uses it, and it's cool. What's going on is basically that you are taking random noise, which looks like your TV when it's tuned to static, and it's just completely random noise. And then you're kind of creating gradients from that and creating something that is more cohesive and ultimately has this kind of shape, right? Almost like a sine wave. But it is kind of cohesive and it is fractal, right? So if you take fractional Brownian motion.
When he says it's fractal, it's not in fractal as in like the infinity sort of, the Vesica Pisces or the Mandelbrot set. It's fractional Brownian motion. It's very different. But yeah, it's a form of fractalization, but it's not a fractal. A fractal is, like the old Spira glasses that you looked through, or the whatever they were, and you get all those crystalline patterns, those little telescopes you had as kids. That looks more fractal than what we're seeing here. But yeah, anyway, that's
you put multiple layers of this like noise on top of each other at different amplitudes and differing frequencies. And so you can imagine if you did that here, you would start to get something that looked much more mountainous, but I'm just going to go with like 1 octave of noise, right? But obviously you would use multiple octaves.
So once you apply that octave, that sort of linear curve, to what you saw earlier, that sort of like almost looked like somebody had rendered clouds in Photoshop. Where you see the darker points, that might give you a peak, and where you see the lighter points, that might give you a trough, or vice versa. And that's pretty much how they would generate a map. So you might see patterns that reoccur as you go over hills, depending.
So below, so like this, this like, I'm embarrassed by this, but this is this graph, and then you just put in an abs. Okay, so
more
you
like
just
an equalization. It
abs
takes
everything
out
that's underneath, and you get something that looks more like rounded hills. So we want, sometimes as we're walking around the terrain, so when I talk about uber noise, sometimes you want it to look like this, and sometimes you want these nice round hills, and kind of create rolling hills and like sharp creases and stuff like that. So that's really simple, so you just abs it as you go. And then taking the complement of that, so just...
Okay, so I think you get pretty much the point, basically. So he's using noise graphs, different octaves to affect the terrains based on a Perlin sort of map that gives you the peaks and troughs, and that's how our terrains are generated, which is great. There's a lot more other sort of filters that you could use. I mean, like the super formula, for example. If I brought up the wiki on the super formula, it's only a couple of lines of code, but it does distortion. He gets to distortion towards the end, but he's using some sort of amplified distortion technique that he's put together himself, which I would imagine is slightly less than what, analytical derivative. So this is modifying and doing the warps. But yeah, if you're interested in all the mathematical stuff and how it's all layered, but basically all he's saying is that they use random noise generation to generate our terrains. And it gives us some sort of variance. It gives some planets a bit more of an alien feel than others. But that's basically it. And the actual erosion is just set on level of height, basically. So the deeper it is, maybe the more erosion will appear there. But it doesn't appear that they're putting erosion on different assets or individual props or anything like that was first mentioned in some of those early 2015 videos that have already been in this playlist. If you haven't seen the playlist from the start, maybe watch them back, because it's really interesting, especially those from 2015, on how it was envisaged. So they've moved away from their vision to this, and I think they've done it for multiples of reasons. Perhaps it's to do with hardware limitation. Perhaps it's because they thought, right, well, it's out on PlayStation 4. We now need to put it out on Xbox, and not only Xbox, we're going to be looking at other platforms as well. We're going to have to run with this for every single platform. We're going to make it cross-platform because they saw other games doing that, and that helps with longevity of the game and the title. So perhaps they locked themselves into the original spec and didn't think of moving away from that, and they've been plugging away with No Man's Sky as long as they can in current spec, and maybe their new title is going to be a next gen title, but after everybody's made that leap from their previous gen to the next gen consoles. Anyway, I'm going to jump to 2019 because this is a very interesting talk. This is a talk with Sean Murray on how he handled the media and handled the backlash from the gaming community and also media as a whole when it came to, not so much the community, but a little. He does touch on it a tad. But yeah, anyhow, I'll let you have a listen because this is really insightful. So this helps you understand the radio silence and all that sort of stuff. Well, hello there, Wilfredo. Welcome. We've also got Catherine W, another awesome content creator in the house there, people. Be sure to check her out. And yeah, welcome Warfy and Bozzy Motul, Uncle Travelling Matt, It's Your Mama. Welcome all. If I missed anybody, sorry, just on a little mini scroll, but I might have gone past someone. Oh, Sins Arcade, another content creator. Anyhow, let's hit play.
What you say in the face of adversity. Please welcome to the stage founder of Hello Games, Sean Murray.
Hello.
Little mini jive, wasn't it? Well, hello there, Gabe Lungan.
Sean
Thanks
Murray.
for subscribing.
The folks at GDC asked me to talk about my journey as a game developer, and in particular about releasing games. So if this talk goes horribly wrong and my slides fail and all that kind of thing, it's just a clever analogy for releasing games that I have devised. But the truth is, I've never met a developer who finds releasing games easy. It always requires grit, and game development is hard. I've been lucky enough to work on a lot of very successful games, but I've always found emotionally the lowest point for me in development is releasing a game. It's not actually been until our most recent project, No Man's Sky, that I learned to actually become a lot more zen about it, to enjoy it, and to learn how to take a team through it.
Hearing him say that just makes him more of a legend in my eyes. I don't know about you guys out there in the viewerverse, but he's got real passion for this, and he's following his passion, he's following his dream, and fair play to him. And yeah, I really like that little meme he used of his beard just growing as he locked himself away into game development.
No Man's Sky was this crazy, innovative, ambitious game. It was a procedural universe, something nobody had done before. And when we would show it to people, we would be excited, they would get excited, and before we knew it, we were building a rocket ship on the way up.
The funny thing is, though, if they are working on another ambitious title right now, taking a look at his current beard, he's somewhere in between here and here. So, taking his beard into account, if that's when he launched, we're not too far away from another game, are we? We need to see a current beard pic, Sean. Beard pic? Heck yes.
Blasting towards the sun. No Man's Sky, when it released, and also still 2 years later, has sold incredibly well. It's gone on to be one of the biggest selling new IPs of all time, which sounds really weird to say out loud. But our release was also one of the most intense and dramatic that I think the games industry has seen.
It gets me there with that little light switch inside of that meme that said Space Whales, and it's flicking the switches on. Well, this is 2019. This is way before they put out Leviathan and gave us Space Whales, essentially. So what you see even in the videos in 2019 shows that it's on their radar of things to do. And considering it took 2 years, from 2019 to now, to get our Space Whales, it does make you wonder when all the other bits and bobs might fall into iteration.
This is something that's becoming increasingly common in the industry. A lot of games have faced this before us and after us, but unlike some of those, we weren't facing just one technical issue that we could fix, and we also were a tiny team. We were 6 people on average making No Man's Sky. We were just 15 when we launched, and we were a little family. And as a family, post-release, we faced some really difficult challenges. Everything that you can imagine from like the worst of the internet, we hit. Regular intervention from police and Scotland Yard and things like that.
Well, thank you there, Alex Tucker, who's just subscribed. Just to point out to people, if you do want to go and watch this video in its entirety without me talking, it's actually on Thunder Humping Turtle Duck Interloper's channel. A good friend of mine, a good buddy. Yeah, if you're watching Thunder, Salutamondo, thank you for putting this up, because I couldn't find it anywhere else.
And I don't really want to talk about that side of things because I think that kind of toxicity and those toxic individuals already control too much of the narrative around games. Instead, I'd like to talk about how we move forward as a team. Because now we find ourselves mentioned as that benchmark for coming back. Doing a No Man's Sky is now a positive thing, right? 2 years out from launch, like I was saying, we're selling kind of numbers that I think most AAA games would be really proud of for their.
Whereas like Cyberpunk, when that dropped, a lot of people were saying, will they do a No Man's Sky? Will they turn this around? So yes, it's now something that gets coined to benchmark other game companies by, not just indie games, but AAA games manufacturers, like those that made, Cyberpunk, Project Red, CD Projekt Red.
Their launch. But more importantly, we have a very positive, probably one of the most positive communities of any game that is launched.
Well said, Mr. Murray.
During those darker days, though, it would have been very easy to quit. It would have been almost expected or the norm. But two things forced me to get out of bed every morning. One was that we could see something that others couldn't. We could see hundreds of thousands of people playing the game every day.
Me.
An average play time of 25 hours across millions of players. We knew that people were enjoying the game and wanted to enjoy it more. The second thing that really made me want to get out and fight is that the narrative around games that launch like this becomes about the team being maybe dishonest or lazy or something like that. I've never met a lazy developer. I've probably made bad mistakes in my time, but the fucking team at Hello Games are incredibly talented and so incredibly hardworking. And so I felt like their legacy deserved to be correct.
I think that's really honourable.
So at first, the intensity of that feedback was overwhelming. But I decided you either had to hide or you had to face it. So I did something that I wouldn't recommend, but I decided to kind of drink from the fire hose, right? Every mail that you send to Hello Games goes directly to my phone and to my watch, right? We didn't block or mute people. If you talked about No Man's Sky, then I probably read it.
Look at his I don't know whether that's directly from his Gmail, but 32,000 messages for him to go through. But look at this. This is all just from one freaking guy. Just was relentless in hammering his phone with shite. Hold on, is that me? For me, I was always hitting up the Zendesk, sending ideas and idea videos and speculation-y type stuff. What if you did this? What if you did? Yeah, I was sending stuff, but not early days. I started hitting up the Zendesk with ideas and things come next. So, yeah, to be honest, I moved on to other titles right at the start. I played No Man's Sky for a good month and a half, and then I moved on to Destiny 2, truth be told.
Again, I wouldn't really recommend it, but it helped me gain a new perspective. And that perspective is that everything is just data. I sat down to categorize everything. I brought in people externally to do it, and we learned a lot from that. For instance, we learned that the most toxic commentary, about 80 to 90% of it, was coming from people who weren't really invested in the game. They were talking online about topics that are very common and very recognizable, and most games become a lightning rod for, like pre-orders or marketing or whatever. They aren't providing good data to you as a developer. That is where a lot of press and prominent voices focus, but we actually began to uncover the ground truth underneath that. The second most negative cohort of players was actually people who had played the game for about 100 hours in the first week. And their feedback was actually incredibly useful. Suddenly, from this overwhelming noise of millions of hot takes, we discovered some ground truth, some real incredibly clear signals, like 37% of people were stopping playing or frustrated in playing just because they didn't like the inventory system. And then suddenly you're like, that I can fix. I could sit down at my computer and I can fix that. Not just that, I agree with you. And now we know what we're doing. We're back making games for people who want to play them. Now, partly I did all of this gathering and data gathering for the team, to shield them. They knew they didn't have to go out and look at Twitter or whatever because it was being taken care of. They could look at raw spreadsheets of cold, hard data. We also created this Tumblr internally for the team, and anything where we found that we were making an impact and people were contacting us, we put that on the Tumblr.
That is so cool. So he shielded them from all of the toxicity and all of the negative feedback. And a lot of that was coming from people that hadn't even played the game. They were just jumping on the bandwagon of hate. But he actually zeroed that out and managed to get to the actual people, the people that were playing for hundreds of hours and getting their comments through to the team and all the positive feedback. The guy's freaking awesome. He completely shielded his staff from that relentless torrent of cack. Hats off, Mr. Murray. You freaking rock. Heck, yes, you do. And that is inspirational for any other games company that's listening to this right now. It really is.
Nothing is more motivating for you who's going through a hard time than knowing that the work that you do is helping other people who are going through similar things. Meanwhile, we learned that press wasn't necessarily the best way for us to communicate with our players. When I grew up, the press kind of led my thinking. I read Edge or whatever to tell me how to feel about development and developers. In 2016 or 2018, we found for a variety of reasons, the press kind of operates downstream from the community.
Edge magazine. The actual covers of Edge magazine were like top of the art. They were beautiful. They were like the most clickablest of thumbnails ever. Yeah.
Because things are click-driven as to what stories you get served and things like that, we would find that glowing articles would disappear from the front page, but a rumor would surface from Reddit straight to the front page of every website in like a ridiculously quick amount of time. So if we wanted to talk to our players, we needed to do it directly, so we just shut down all communication with the press. And it was fun. I really enjoyed that. I've never wanted to talk to the press in the first place. I've never really got into games for that, and I think I'm terrible at it.
Yeah. If you go back to episodes like 1, 2, whatever, where we look at some of the bits and bobs, totally agree. Or if you look at the GameSpot interviews and other things like that, or if you look at the video No Man's Lie or whatever, you're going to find loads of stuff where the press just picked him apart in the way that he just said. You know, things would make it to the front page just off of a single line of wordage, you know. I do really feel for him because this isn't what he does. He makes games. He doesn't talk to the press. And they tore him a bit of a new one, to be fair. But I want to say a massive thank you to Kieran Davidson, who's just subscribed. Welcome aboard.
So it felt like us being true to who we were as a company. Now, obviously, yes, listen to the community. It's very important for problems, not necessarily for solutions. We changed the game radically, and we changed it in line with our own vision, right? Someone at Valve, who was a fan of the game, said to me, what you do now is more important than what you say. And I can't tell you how many times I sat down to write a blog post to explain to people our side of the story or, kind of calm the storm or set things right. However, as a developer of a released game, I think that there's only one thing that's credible, and that's your actions. We decided to talk to the community through patch notes alone. So if we wanted to say something to our players, we had to put something in a build, we had to ship that build, and then we had to tell people about it. And there's something really pure and simple about that, and it informs the way we develop. It will inform the way we develop going forward. It's what we got into games to do. It allowed me to do something that I've always done in difficult times, whether it was crappy bosses that I've dealt with before or crappy situations at school growing up. I got my head down, I sat in front of a computer, and I made games, which is what I enjoy. I think there's this thing I've said to the team a few times, and it's something I've heard elsewhere, which is find your metric for success and optimize for that. And I love this. I'm a programmer, so we're saying words like metric and optimization, and that is right up my street, right? It speaks my language. It sounds cold and clinical, but I find a lot of meaning in it. Perhaps you want critical success. Perhaps you want the highest number of concurrencies. Whatever it is, find your metric. And every day as a team, you are faced with hundreds of decisions. And everything becomes so much simpler when you relate that back to your metric and make decisions optimized for that. But remember that comparison can be the thief of joy. When you release a game, it is so easy to fixate on how another game is achieving your metric better than you are, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Focus on you and your game. Now, everyone on the team has their own metric. I said to the team, this is something that we should do, and they kind of joked that I've been reading too many self-help books or something like that, but actually it's been really helpful for us.
Well, Fredo, that's quite a good question. So when did the emoji teaser start? Well, right back when there was going to be quite a large update, rather than do a singular emoji, Sean used to do what was called a GIB. So it was like a little ASCII image of a little sort of like blob creature pointing. It was what was on the billboard back in 2019, I'd like to say, maybe. Yeah. But yeah, that sort of GIB. But yeah, then he would put out an emoji, just the one emoji, to sort of reference what that big update might allude to. He didn't start doing the emojis for every single expedition, but he has started to now, so I don't know. Yeah, it varies, I think.
For me, it became about enjoying my work. And how I enjoy my work is seeing other people enjoying it. So that actually led me to this question of like, why do I make games? Which is something I just hadn't really thought about before. But I had the opportunity and a lot of a situation that meant that maybe I didn't want to do that going forward. And I'm, like I said, a programmer, so I only understand human emotions in one way. And that's through the use of numbers and graphs. So just like any normal person, I started plotting my contentment on a month-by-month basis. Right, we've all done that. So for today, I actually asked a bunch of other friends who are developers to do the same, right? To draw out their journey as a game developer, right? And we all largely overlapped, right? Concept is fun, it's amazing. And it's followed by a more difficult pre-production, where you start thinking about, okay, was that concept such a good idea? And then you kind of climb out of that just in time for production, when you realize that everything that you did in pre-production was a terrible idea. And things are way tougher, and then you just think, oh, just focus, we'll get this game out, and when this game out is, it'll be amazing, and won't that be an incredible moment? And actually, for the reality is, it's kind of taboo, but for the majority of developers, it's a real low point.
I'd say it goes the same with making YouTube videos. You know, you come up with an idea. Yeah, this will be a great idea. You start putting it together. You put the video out there. You know, you go through all the production. You put all the freaking tags in. You do all your thumbnail. Like, oh, this is going to be a good one. They're going to love this. You put it out there, and then it gets a couple of views. And you're like, oh, maybe not then. And then you do another video. You think, oh, yeah, this one would just go under the carpet. No, it freaking spikes. You're like, what the fudge? You never know what's going to happen till it happens.
It's kind of an anticlimax. And what I've learned is that every part of game development is harder than the last. And I have this question of like, why do we do it? And I've thought about this a lot over the last few years, right? And
my days, look at this graph. He's comparing it to life. I would say compare this to something that you do, a hobby, an interest, or even your job, you know. And yeah, you're going to have a very similar sort of graph where it comes to happiness and time. I bet you. I think you can apply this to pretty much everything. You know, it's like even learning to drive a car. You know, the concept of it, freaking great. As soon as you get in that car for the first time, freaking stressful. And then as soon as you manage to get all the way through and you're actually driving, the amount of people that come out the woodwork that needs a freaking lift takes all the joy out of it.
Studies like consistently show this graph of basic human happiness. It starts out like you expect. Childhood is, you know, fun and exciting, obviously, and then you become a teenager, things are a little bit harder, and then you climb out of that in your like 20s, and you learn to kind of find your feet, and then you have a choice. If you choose to go forward and have kids, statistically, your average happiness decreases quite a lot.
Oh, really?
Right? During those toddler years, then those toddlers become teenagers, and now you've got the double whammy. They're going through their low point in the graph, and you're going through your low point in the graph, right? And then the final insult is that they move out, and you're the saddest you could be, right?
Well, welcome there, Dad's Game Time. Dad's Game Time has also got a channel, very good channel as well on YouTube. Check him out.
So that's my talk. Making games is terrible. Don't have kids.
Just end off now. Bye. Yeah, brilliant. Sean Murray.
No, I do have some experience here, right? I embarked on this crazy, stupid project, right? The most ambitious game we could dream up with this tiny team. But I also helped bring 3 children into the world at the same time during those 5 years of development. And I discovered that there's a secret that those studies on happiness and my little graph doesn't show, right? Something amazing happens when you zoom in on that graph. We tend to measure happiness year by year, month to month. But actually, when you embark on something like this, as an indie dev, as a parent, or whatever, you tend to find that day to day, your happiness is changing wildly. I've come to realize that what you do in that situation is you're trading boring old average happiness for moments of transcendental joy. Brief glimpses of what this thing you're making could become. And as a developer, over the last few years, I've learned to take a step back and actually try to enjoy that journey as a whole.
You see, when I zoom into my graph about video making, yeah, if I can make somebody smile or laugh during one of my videos, or even raise a question, and they're thinking about it for a few hours after they've watched my videos, then I've achieved what I've set out to do. You know, and I get that reflected in my comments. So if you have anything nice to say, or if you want to give me some feedback, I do read my comments. And it does. I read them first thing in the morning and usually last thing at night. And if I get a chance midday, I might read a couple more. So yeah, hit me up. Let me know how you feel about my videos, because that's what keeps me going, people. And also, you know, people joining me on the live chat. It's always great to have interaction with you chappies as well, and chapettes.
For me, transcendental joy beats average happiness, even if it's just that you get those glimpses of it.
Exactly that, yeah.
And while we're here and we're comparing, you know, having kids to making a game, because they're pretty much the same thing, then it suddenly makes sense to me why I would feel so kind of rudderless once my game comes out. It's my empty nest, right? My game's out there doing its own thing, occasionally calling me, right? And for me, over the last few years, I've learned to love tending my garden. No Man's Sky, for me, became the perfect outlet, right? There's this huge universe filled with players and somewhere where anything could exist. And if we look at the biggest games in the world right now, Warframe, Rainbow Six Siege, Fortnite, they all kind of had this slightly rocky or lukewarm launch.
That's a good point. And each of those games that he just mentioned as well are constantly putting out frequent updates. And they're breathing new life and keeping their players happy and interested, and are not being charged over and over again for things. I think he's really struck onto something here with the model that Hello Games is doing until they bring out their new title, and then hopefully they're going to do the same with that one, because they saw how awesome it was and how it carried things over. But when he says that his nest is empty and he's now tending his garden, sort of more of a retirement sort of thing, you know, but it's not, because what they've got at Hello Games is their own bespoke engine. Their engine is their brainchild behind what has been put out into the ether. So that's what they need to nurture and continue to use, because it's still in its infancy stage. It's still conceptual, their engine, in a roundabout way. There's so much potential inside of their engine. So I really hope to see more of that unlocked in future updates with next-gen technology.
Innovation is in such short supply in the industry. And we need it so badly. We need to encourage it. We need to foster it. We need to ask people to shoot for the moon. And if they fail on their first attempt, we need to be there to support them. We focus far too much as an industry on week one sales and so little on long-term impact. We're all making games in the most polarized and intense moment in gaming. And it can be scary. But there's a simplicity I've found in releasing No Man's Sky. We've started something new now, and I'm loving it. I'm in that high part of the grasp, right? But I know that games...
But is he though? Look at the beard. Look at the beard. The beard says a different story, Mr. Sean. Yes, it says that you're a little bit further on. But yeah, because you haven't told anybody what your new project is. Perhaps you're still in that sort of conceptual stage. I know you're in production, but you haven't told anybody what it is. So maybe you found a new way of holding on to that high for a little bit longer. We can't wait to see what this new ambitious title is, Mr. Sean, and I hope, I mean, this was 2019. We're in 2022, people. Let's hope that they put something out there in the very near future on what they're working on, because I can't wait to hear more.
And making games is never easy. So if we're going to do it, then let's not do it for anything that doesn't make an impact, that can't really change things or push the boundaries. Let's make sure it's insanely ambitious. And let's make sure that we savor the journey every single step of the way. Thank you.
Well, there we go, people. That's pretty much everything I've got for you in this episode. But it's not the last episode I intend to do. I want to do one more where he talks to IGN after the Origins release. And we'll see if we can find any other interviews that I might throw in there as well, just to sort of compare the two together or something. Excuse me. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I've got for you out there. And who's this? Dale Goddard says, you and Rod make me laugh out loud. Thanks, guys. Well, thank you, Dale. Just there's no chappy. Nice one. But yeah, anyhow, people, I'm going to be ending off now. And yeah, I'm going to be going to a wedding this weekend. So I might not have much content out on the Saturday or Sunday. Friday night, I've got some of my family coming down to stay at mine because they need to travel to the wedding with me. So yeah, I'm hoping to still do the Friday weekend jaunt, but I'm going to have a house full of people. There might be some background noise as a little bit of a heads up. I might have to go and be antisocial and lock myself away in here with you chappies. Yeah, anyway, people, take care. And yeah, see you tomorrow, hopefully, for the weekend mission. Because, yeah, I want to earn some Quicksilver for those free new posters. If you haven't checked out the free new posters, they're looking freaking sweet as. They really are. Very nice. Take care, all. Bye. Bye.